So what do you focus your intention on? I've seen this recently. It's kind of weird. I see these phases of things that happen. And I've seen lately with some people I know that I've talked directly with and then with comments on the videos, the struggle of what you focus on, what you fight for, how you interact and deal with the ex. And the reality is every time something happens and it highlights the unfairness of what's going on, it causes you to, think about things that are going on and decide or potentially consider different ways to engage with it. Actually, I had something like that happen the other day. Some news came up, and it had this not a really bad negative response, but it started my head turning, and it was like, maybe I should do some things, and I started thinking about the battle and the war, which I normally talk about. Weird timing with everything going on in the world to be using that, but that's the analogy I use a lot. And I started thinking about some tactical things, right? I mean, so what could I do right now? What would be an appropriate response? What would be potentially in my best interest? And as I started going through that and thinking about it, I took a step back and it's like, okay, what is my long-term goal? It's like, what am I really looking at? And what is a conflict worth? I don't want to go into too much details, but let's just say that I'm looking at things and I got a couple years, under 2 years left of being, under the purview of family court. So now had this scenario come up and I was looking at, more time, 5, 10 years, whatever, then maybe that would be a different, add a different weight to the decision. The point I'm trying to make on this, and the thing I want you to think about, is when the ex does something, you really need to think about, is it worth fighting? I mean, an example I'll use, it's not really related to what I'm going through right now, but is probably something that could be yours. Let's say your court order says, transition times is at 6 p.m. on a Monday. And you're irritated because the ex is constantly late. You're sitting there ready to take the kids at 6 p.m. and you're twiddling your thumbs. Maybe you have dinner ready. Maybe you had plans. And 6:05 rolls around. Then 6:10, 6:15, 6:30, 6:32. They show up and everybody, the transition happens. Now, the reality is, if your court order says 6 o'clock, and there's no wording in there that says what to do if there's a problem, well, let's just say there is, right? I mean, there could be wording saying, if there's a problem, you'll text the person, and more than likely they won't do it, right? So you're sitting there, twiddling your thumbs, waiting, and now you're trying to figure out what to do. Well, let me pull this back for a moment. Initially, what you're going to do is at 6:05 or 6:10, you'll be texting the ex saying, the court order says you're supposed to be here at 6:10. And then you're going to get, we got caught up on something, if you're going to make a big deal about this, and it's just this back and forth. If you find yourself in that mode, go look at that hybrid no contact video. I'll put a link for it up on the card above. You got to pick your battles, and that one's a waste of time. You want to say that a couple of times just to see if they'll start to conform. Fine, that's fine. But I'm here to tell you that if you're on my channel, the likelihood that any communication is going to achieve some type of miraculous understanding of being a good human, it ain't going to happen. All you'll get is just back and forth BS. So don't even waste your time with it. You know, and then what I'll see before, you know, I mean, not say before, but what I'll also see typically is, and I experience this too, a scenario where then you're going to get into this conversation of, well, you don't really care about the kids. You know, you know, we were doing something that was really important. All you care about is you, or whatever. They'll try to somehow shame you into trying to say you're a piece of crap. And in reality, you might even say the same thing. I found myself, if I went back and looked at some of my old communication, there were a few times where whenever she poked me in the eye, then I would, you know, go down and itemize out why what she was doing was wrong. It doesn't matter. You're not going to, you know, you're never going to change their mind. You might feel guilty about something if something happened, or you're running late and they're freaking out about it. You might feel like, oh my God, I got to get this done. But it's a moot point. You got to really, really think through what it's worth fighting for. Okay, so let's say now you've gotten to the point where now you're at this point and it's like they're always late. Is it worth it to go to court and file contempt charges for that? You know, you got to ask yourself that question. Is it worth it to go pay another attorney, put a $4,000 to $8,000 retainer, drag back to court? I mean, do you really think that you're going to be able to affect a custody change because of a pattern of being late? You know, I'll tell you what'll happen. You go, let's say you do that. Let's say you're like, yeah, this person's always playing games. I got all the evidence. I got a pile of documentation. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to prove this point, and the court is going to turn around and they're going to swap custody. The likelihood of that is as close to zero as you're going to get for this scenario. I mean, to be perfectly honest, maybe if some really serious stuff was going on, you might have a 20% chance. But my point is this, is like you really have to pick your battles. And is it worth it? I'll tell you right now that if you're going to, you know, fight, you better make damn sure that you have an 80 to 90% chance of success to accomplish what you are trying to accomplish. Because if you don't, if you go to court and you swing for the fences and you lose, you have just emboldened a toxic, narcissistic person to continue playing more games, because they know, or at least they will feel, that, wow, you know, that they pulled this threat and they bluffed and they lost. And the reality is, without a crushing defeat against your nemesis, they're not going to feel it. Remember, a toxic person enjoys the narcissistic supply they get from that cat and mouse game. The old analogy of wrestling in the mud with a pig, the pig likes it. You know, you might even win, you might win some of it, but if there's enough of a victory point for them, even if they lose, then you've lost. Because all it's going to do is embolden them. Now, conversely on this is you'll have people who don't care and they're dragging you to court because just to create the drama, because they know that it's going to stress you out, that it's going to pull you in. I mean, here's the thing, guys. If I wanted to make my ex's life a living hell, I mean, like really, not the fake living hell that she tries to pretend that I've done. I know how to do it. Drag to court all the time, make everything an issue. You know, every time there's in my situation, she owes me a ton of money and I'm overpaying in support payments right now. You know, I mean, I could turn around and just try to drive that home and just try to make it as miserable as possible. And there's some people who like to do it. And I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, full honesty, full disclosure. 7 years ago, if I would have had access and I wasn't financially ruined, I would have probably done that. If I could have spent, $100 to get a dime back, I would have done it just because I was so angry at the scenario, at the games, the lack of fairness, the lack of accountability, that I would have tried to push it. And in some ways, I'm grateful that I didn't, that I was completely financially ruined, because what I was not including in that would have been the emotional cost. Because what I'll tell you is, more than likely, a lot of those times I probably would have failed, and I would have been just dumping money on the ground, and just negatively affecting myself. And I'm sure every one of you watching this right now can attest, or can probably, comment below on this, or at least let me know if I'm tracking, or if you're tracking with what I'm saying. Every time you try to hold the person accountable and it falls short, it hurts more than if you would have done nothing. And that was the reoccurring theme that I saw. And I'll tell you, there were times where I would engage with the ex because she would do something stupid, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a really dumb move on her part, and I can just step back and let it blow up and cause her a problem. And I would stick my nose into it, and I would try to say, hey, you made this mistake. Do you really want to do it? And inevitably, what would happen is it would blow up in my face. I'll give you an example. When I started dating Debbie, my girlfriend, the ex found out about it, and and the ex does what is stereotypical of toxic exes. They pick up the phone, they go boop, 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 and they call child support services, or they call anybody they can. Sometimes they'll call CPS, but in my situation, child support services, he's a deadbeat. He doesn't pay child support. So they are like, oh, okay. They opened up a case, started sending me information saying, hey, well, actually, initially what they told me is they said, hey, stop paying her money. Because, see, she lied, because I was paying child support. There was a period of time during the government shutdown, 8 years ago, where I didn't get paid. There's a more involved story on that. And that was some decisions I made. So, I'm not claiming to be the victim here, but, part of the thing was, trying to make it accountable. Her accountable, So anyways, what they told me is they said, hey, don't pay her anything. We're going to do an analysis and just wait, and then you'll pay us later and whatever. I said, so stop, they actually said to me, I asked them, I said, well, I'm already paying. Well, we're going to tell your employer to stop sending us money. We're going to stop everything. And I'm like, seriously? I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, how long is this going to take? And they're like, well, it'll take a few months. And I'm like, it's funny. It's funny because what I'm getting ready to say is the reality, and the way the story was spun is completely different, right? And what I'm getting at is this, is I said, well, wait a minute. I said, the only money that she gets is from me. Like, I'm paying everything. I'm paying her enough money to pay her house, food, utilities, games, everything. She's living off me right now. And they said, well, yeah, okay, but, we're not going to send her any money, and you need to stop sending her money. Don't give her any money. And we'll tell your employer to stop sending money. And I'm like, okay. So, and I believed him, right? So I believed him. And I should have just said, okay, and just shut up and let it play out. But I actually reached out to the ex because I'm like, you stupid moron, what the hell are you doing? And I remember calling her and I said, hey, do you realize what you've just done? Because I know exactly what I've done. That type of crap, all smug and everything. And I'm like, look, this is what they just told me. I don't care. I can, do you have enough money to survive for 3 months until they figure this out? Well, no. Anyways, bottom line is what the person told me was incorrect. So by the time the ex called and went, wait a minute, my ex just said that, and they're like, no, that's not wrong. That's not true. Made me look like an ass. Made me look like I was, it made me look like I was just being a butthead. So my point is this. You've got to minimize your interactions with your ex. The caveat with this is that, if you're in active litigation and you're trying, and they're messing with custody, like not 20 minutes, not 10 minutes, I think one time in the last 4 months, transition happened at time, the kids walked through the door at 6 o'clock, and that time or is it 6 o'clock? And it blew my mind because I was like, they're never that early, or they're never on time, right? You just got to pick your battles. And I've seen people who, when they post their thing, are like, oh, this is a scenario, and they go da-da-da-da-da, they put out all the thing, and I'm like, man, you're getting bent out of shape on the wrong thing. This scenario is not as dire and complicated as you think. Now, granted, I get, I've been dealing with this for a long time. I've been dealing with this for basically a decade now. So when I see somebody talking about this, I'm looking at it from a decade of dealing with this, and I am recognizing that I used to be in the same boat. That I would, every opportunity the ex was doing something, or every opportunity to keep that communication going, I would engage in. And it's not worth it. It's not worth it. There's not much that comes from it. And that little bit of connection that you get from them to keep the drama going, there's no dividends. There isn't a payoff for it. Again, going back to the battle and the war analogy, yeah, you can have some skirmishes where you engage and you fight and you make your point. But here's the thing. This is what you get. This is what you have to think about, right? And this is what you need to gauge all your decisions on. Okay, you need to gauge it on what's the best decision for you of the double binds, because all these are going to be double binds. There's really no good decision. What is the best decision for you personally? And I'll dive in a little bit more into this before I finish this up. And what works well for your kids. And I say the first part about what you personally is it's the bigger picture. Not like, I can't let this go. I have to fight it. I got to hold them accountable. I got to take my finger and go, I got this little piece of nugget of information that I've been holding on, and now is the opportune time for me to shove it in their face. And it's hardly ever worthwhile. What you have to be looking at it is like, okay, what's my number one goal? Your number one goal should be how do I have peace and tranquility in my life? How do I minimize the drama? Number one. And that needs to be your guiding light. So when you look to make a decision, it's like base it on that. For instance, I'll use another story from my past. It was about 7-8 years ago, I think. It might be 5 years. I don't know. I can't remember if it was when I was running the channel or not. I get an email from the ex saying, child 2 has a long lost friend that's coming into town, and it's this time, which we mistakenly gave the ex a window of what our summer vacation was going to be like. Amazingly enough, it was right in the middle. But they never do something where it's so overt. So it's like, oh no, it's just a coincidence. Anyways, and the comment was, hey, this person's coming in. We need to do a girls thing. So you have to take our son, And for these few days, we're going to be doing something. And I was just like, oh, crap. As soon as I saw it, I knew I knew there was no fighting this. And I waited. I just, because the ex had always played the game where, oh, did you send me an email? And I just didn't do anything. I was really trying to think it through. Because I'm like, all right, looking at this, what's the best, worst decision for this? Because engaging with her, I knew it wasn't a winning battle, because she was going to ultimately use, tell our kid what was going on, and they obviously want to see their friend, and so I knew there was no way to win it. Now, battle-wise, absolutely, I had priority that year for summer vacation. I had plans, completely within my right to say, oh, that's so sad. No, that's not going to happen. We have plans. It's not going to work. Fortunately, at this stage of the game, I'd already recognized or understood what was going on. So I stopped making plans that were not changeable, that I couldn't move around. And I was waiting to answer. And, before I could respond, she tells she tells the number 2 child, when they come over, they're all excited about seeing their friends. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to try to make it work. And, and that's the thing, is like, I had to pick the worst scenario, or not the worst scenario. I had to pick the best of a bunch of bad choices, a bunch of double binds, triple binds, to make something work. But it was a wedge issue too. So the ex, I got screamed at by my, 13, 14-year-old at the time. And it was just stupid, I remember at one point, child comes through the door, starts pointing her bony little finger, going, me, fucking yelling at me. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear. And, I'm like, look, cool your jets. I'm trying to work with your mom to try to make this happen. So, knock it off. And, I calmed her down a little bit. But I knew what was going to happen. I knew the chess moves, and I knew the moves that she was going to make, and I knew what I was getting backed in the corner to do. You got to just pick your battles wisely. You have to understand what how do you maintain the peace in your life, and how do you maintain, and the second part is with your kids, how do you make sure that you don't burn your relationship to the ground? Guys, remember that parental alienation, what they're able to do with that is orchestrate situations and scenarios where we play an active role in it. It's not all them saying, oh, your mom is a piece of crap. Oh, your dad's a piece of crap. It's they plant the seed, they create the conflict, the wedge issue. You walk into it. You do exactly what they're expecting you to do. And then when the kid comes back all crying because mommy or daddy is mean, then they're like, oh, so sorry, so sad, that type of thing. And we walk right into it. So take these situations slow, right? Don't just like hard charge into it. You got to really think it through. Give yourself, like in the scenario I was just talking about, I slowed that down and gave myself a lot of days to ponder this and to think about it before I responded, because I knew it was a bomb getting ready to go off, and I was trying to give myself and my relationship with the kids the best chance to navigate it. Anyways, hopefully this little tirade is helpful. If it is, let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next one.